All right, everyone. The Huffington Post is now labeling the repeal of net neutrality a possible Russian conspiracy theory. They have the big long article, archive link in the description about it. And I'm thinking to myself, net neutrality. Okay, so basically, the ISPs will not be able to throttle or differently treat web traffic. They treat all the traffic the same. Why is it that the Huffington Post and all these groups don't extend the same logic to wanting to protect neutrality on domain name registrars to make sure that a site that's not engaged in criminal behavior, that's not engaged in anything that's specifically attacking and disrupting other sites, and is just, handling registries, that site won't be able to discriminate against people either? Oh, that's right, because they want that discrimination. There's the whole thing. They don't want the ISP. They think that the ISPs should handle all traffic equally. But they don't extend that same reasoning to any other rung of the internet. The internet exists in stages. The ISPs are the most low, rudimentary, but technically most important level, actually handling the traffic. But you've got to have someone to register and host your domain name. You've got to be able to have a payment processor, otherwise how the hell are you going to exist? You have to be interconnected to some degree with other platforms. Otherwise, you'll get no traffic, and then you've got to be searchable. That is, Google and Bing and these others have to, not basically block your site out. Unfortunately, at all other four stages of the internet, you've got rampant abuse. You've got total bias. You've got corporations censoring their competitors, both directly and indirectly, all the time. The Huffington Post not only doesn't have a problem with this, but supports it. And the reason is political, because the perception, and it's not entirely true, is that it's primarily aimed at the hateful, the generically hateful. Now, originally it was supposedly, when these steps were first taken, deplatforming was branded as well. We're going to knock a few of these like literal Nazi sites offline because, they're attacking victims of shootings or whatever. We're going after people who, at the very least, even if you don't support them being censored, I happen not to support them being censored, I think they should be able to speak too. Even if you don't do that, at the very least, the average person would label them bigoted groups. But it has since metastasized, like InfoWars. Is InfoWars actually a hate site? No, absolutely not. But they've been banned by virtually the entire normie internet. It's happened, completely now. They can't use any of the main platforms. They can't even get their payments processed by PayPal. Which should, on the fiscal side, the most worrying thing that's happening right now is really on the financial end. The fact that sites that are essentially the internet version of banks would be picking and choosing who to do business with for reasons unrelated to criminal behavior is frightening. It's frightening that people have any tolerance for this. It's frightening that I can find any person who supports such a move. It's frightening that people think that it's necessary, especially since InfoWars is, what proportion of internet traffic does their one site actually host? 1/1,000,000th of 1% or some insane tiny total? Obviously going to radicalize your children. It's basically making a mountain out of a molehill. The primordial problem of a handful of actually violent, truly despicable people on the internet has been amplified and the problem compounded into something that's not actually a realistic problem by opportunistic corporations, including the Huffington Post. The real thing is this. The Huffington Post doesn't want its traffic throttled, but it does want its competitors throttled. Now, this is why we need not just net neutrality, but an internet bill of rights. We can solve the problem of net neutrality, the problem of bias on social platforms, payment processing. We can solve these problems, real or perceived, with a simple bill, an internet bill of rights, that simply causes all things to be treated equally within the realm of the internet for U.S. users, on U.S. sites especially. Simply out of principle, we need to institute something like that. Don't declare them public utilities. They can do whatever the fuck they want as far as basically anything goes, but they shouldn't be banning people off of platforms that are the modern public square, fiscally or in terms of communication, unless there is a legitimate reason to do so. Barring them from doing so is no different from telling a business, hey, no, you're not allowed to simply deny service to someone because they're gay or because they have black skin. How's it any different? The internet is now a powerful economic juggernaut, a series of corporations. We constrain brick and mortar corporations in their treatment of both employee and people who take advantage of their goods and services. Why not on the internet? I believe in a Wild West internet. We're going to lose that quite clearly if we don't do something. The only answer is constitutional in nature. We need a Bill of Rights for the internet. Huffington Post competes with people like me. It wants people like me to be banned off of every site. It wants to deplatform a lot more in Infors. If you think that they're gonna that the start and end of depersoning is Alex Jones, you've got your head screwed on backwards. It's going to metastasize. It's going to continue marching along. There are some targets that are more obvious than others. Specifically, and I've told you over and over again, the same pattern holds true. It's going to continue, mainly with people who do real-world stuff. That's the first wave. The front line is people that are involved in actual on-the-ground activism. It's also easier to deplatform them. It's easier to deplatform a person when you can say, oh, so-and-so is at a rally. We're going to send Antifa in to get them involved in an antagonistic situation, get footage of them defending themselves, and we'll present it as though they were the aggressor, and we can get them kicked off all these sites, because these sites have begun kicking people off for behavior unrelated to their work on these sites. It's like Twitter has opened itself up and openly proclaimed, we reserve the right to ban you based on off-site behavior. We'll be watching. PayPal has done the same thing. Patreon, a lot of the payment side especially. I'm not sure if YouTube does at this point. I think they do to some extent, but generally speaking not. And even Facebook really doesn't delve into this, but Facebook's an afterthought. It's a dying platform. Who gives a fuck? All of these behaviors should be banned. Specifically, we're talking about a situation which people are talking about a free market that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There is no free market. A dozen corporations control basically everything you see and hear on the internet. They are the gatekeepers. Therefore, they have a responsibility to be neutral gatekeepers. Internet Bill of Rights. Take care of that. Take care of the ISPs. Take care of the registrars. Take care of the payment processors. Problem fucking solved. The Huffington Post, though, will never support it, and unfortunately, the odds are very low that such a thing will ever be done, because it doesn't seem, for some odd reason, the same people that got together in enormous numbers, we're talking hundreds of millions of people signing petitions, leaving emails, sending in calls, to defeat something like SOPA, or PIPA, or ACTA, or to come out against the TPP. There were literally real-world marches at the time. The kind of fervor that existed to destroy potentially internet-killing things then, for some reason has not appeared for the obvious bias of Silicon Valley. And for some reason appears to be, relatively low, even with the EU's meme-killing, internet-killing legislation, Article 13 or whatever the hell it is. Basically, over there they would, charge sites a huge amount of money in the form of having to institute filter after fucking filter and manually look at everything that gets posted on their sites, or get fined by a foreign authority that technically speaking has no sway over them. I think Silicon Valley should just ignore the European Union because they're all US sites, but that's just me. Oh, hey, it's a free market. We can let people post memes in violation of your laws if you want, because we're US firms. If you don't like it, build your own internet. That's basically what they tell people like me. Oh, you don't like the inherent bias on these sites? Build your own Twitter, your own YouTube, your own PayPal, your own Patreon, your own domain registrar, your own ISP, in fact, several, your own app store, your own line of cell phones. Okay, so basically you need like $10-20 billion of investment money to get this accomplished. Wait like 2,000 or 3,000 years. I'll scrape together my pennies at the end of each month and I'll see what I can do. It's just not feasible, but it is feasible for Congress to act in regards to U.S. firms and institute an Internet Bill of Rights. And fuck the Huffington Post. This has nothing to do with Russia. If I came out and said, well, it's a Russian conspiracy that Silicon Valley is banning people who oppose, proxy wars and globalist policies that'll weaken the United States. Huffington Post obviously isn't going to post, something like that. That would be closer to the truth, though, because those policies actually do make the U.S. weaker. Well, I guess the Russians get what they want. It must be a conspiracy. It's Reds all the way down. There's Reds under the bed. There are communists in your trash watching everything you do. That's not a sane worldview, and yet there are so many people. More people consider that the very transparently false premise of a massive Russian conspiracy that is objectively wrong. It's totally non-existent. There are more people that take that threat seriously, that's a threat to the U.S., than the threat of mass censorship by billion-dollar corporations that in some cases are objectively being inspired by foreign states in Western Europe, crushing U.S. content creators because they compete with multinational firms that, again, offshore and don't pay any taxes here. That's not a threat whatsoever. No, we lose billions of dollars a year, but that's meaningless. Nobody cares. That's basically the so-called logic of our corporate times, I suppose. We need to rein in Silicon Valley. For their own good, in part. Look, they're going to lose their firms anyway. You see the collapse of the tech giants. It'll be another, like a bubble. We can prevent that from happening, but we need to act. That's about all. Peace out.